Good morning, brothers and sisters. Welcome to today's broadcast for the fourth Sunday of Advent, Breaking Down False Beliefs. Where today, as I mentioned, the pattern is going to be to tear down old things, then build up a new foundation. Last week, we started with building a foundation, and there were a lot of things I had in my notes that I did not get to talk about last week. We will cover those subjects again as they come up, as they become relevant during the year. As last week we talked about building foundations, this week I'd like to talk about clearing out some outgrowths that can come up from these foundations. There are many false beliefs, there are many myths, there are many honestly dangerous ideas that we see, both amongst those outside and even those inside the occult community. I would like to address them. So, if we're going to break this down, let's start with some of the bigger ones. This will not be comprehensive. This will not be exhaustive. You could probably think of several others that will occur to you or that you've heard. Please do not hesitate to mention them in the comments. As we begin, the big one that we always hear is magic is evil. Now, I've talked about this one in detail. I spent the first two videos of this series talking about that in so much detail. It's really about how you define the word. If you define it as working with evil spirits or the tacit or explicit invocation of demons, then obviously you're discussing an evil act. If you're talking about applied theology, even if you're talking about that really dumb one, the art and science of causing change to occur in a conformity with will, you're still not discussing an evil act. It's all about how narrow or how broad you allow your spectrum to be, your vision to be. Corresponding to this one is that magic is unnatural. Nothing more ridiculous can be thought of. Because magic, the grimoires say this, Renaissance magic states this even more emphatically, and modern magic states it too. Magic is a natural science. It is the application of the laws of nature, both of nature and of supernature. And by working within those laws is how you manifest your results. Whether that result is your spiritual development or causing certain things to manifest here on this physical plane. This brings us to one of my pet peeves. The belief I've seen in some circles that magic has to be adversarial. Yes, air quotes are there for a reason. I see this one amongst LHPers and amongst Satanists, and not even all of them. It just seems like the more LARPy types is where I see this one. And it really does sound like they're LARPing. Like adversarials, and you have to rail against God and society and creation and everything else. Here's a problem. If God is the source of all things, and therefore also the source of all magic, then how is railing against God going to result in anything successful? The only thing that would be successful is if you put yourself into the hands of a deceiving entity, and they do exist. If you put yourself in the hands of a deceiving entity, put yourself in the hands of such, and they will trick you into thinking you've got powers, whereas they're really just granting you favors and just guiding you along. So the idea that magic has to be adversarial is so far from the truth. It's even further from the truth on the idea that magic is unnatural. Because one, it works along with nature, and in order to work, it cannot rail against nature. The laws of nature exist. It is by obeying the laws of nature, for example, that we have this keyboard or this tablet on which I'm using the broadcast, or computers or servers or cars or clocks, technology. Obeying the laws of nature and learning how to work with and apply those laws into new and useful combinations. If you rail against nature, you don't get your technologies. Magic is a technology. It is a science, whether microcosmic or macrocosmic. So the idea that is adversarial, it's not just a self-evident false belief. To my mind, it's probably one of the worst beliefs you can have. Now I'm going to go to two others that they're related, and I actually heard them from the same person. You should never use magic for personal gain. No, and most of you might think this is Christian piety, and it sounds like Christian piety. Gerald Gardner described most Christians' attitude to prayer as a pious attitude of something might happen, but a firm belief that it could never happen to me. I believe he said that in the first couple chapters of his Witchcraft Today. And the idea that you should never use magic for personal gain, I heard this, I didn't hear this from a Christian, I heard it from a neo-pagan. And it's something that he taught one of his students that I'm friends with. You should never use magic for personal gain. But then, what have you actually manifested? I'm not going to call names. This is actually somebody I respect, somebody I'm close friends with. And I know that he's coming from a sincere place. So I'm not speaking of him directly. But when most people I hear say you should never use magic for personal gain, it's like they're either in a position where they've never needed anything, or they've never had to want for anything, or they're trying to cover up their own incompetence with the science. I'm not really convinced. Then let's look at people out there, the larger movers and shakers in the occult community, the people who are very serious, who pursued their science and their art for years. They all manifest things in their personal life. And yes, that includes me. I'm not one of the big movers or shakers. I wouldn't consider myself a major player at all. I'm just this random person who sits in a weird inside and outside position who just happens to have some ideas. That's all I see myself as. And yes, I have used magic to help me in my life and gain physical things. So do most successful magicians. As I think it was Grace Farron said to me in a phone conversation once, if you're truly adept at something, you're not going to be needy, because you will have a way to work it. And I never really understood that until after my car accident. Because I started reading about magic in 1989. I started learning how to do magic, really do magic, in 2009, when I was thrust into a situation where I started realizing, hey, wait, this is how it works. And I saw what I call my vision of the gear wheels of the universe, just the gear wheels that make the universe spin. I talked about that in my post about magic and the idea that necessity is just a contingency of desire. A lot of people have trouble with that idea, and I really don't think it's a basic level idea, but it's something I found to be very extremely true. A saying I once heard among salesmen is that if you're making the sale because you need to pay your rent, you may as well start moving. Even Crowley had it right when he talked about lust for result. Now, of course, like with many things, he still didn't get it 100% right. Anxiety for result is a better way to word it. I thank Rocky Geist for that. I thank him for wording it that way. But see, it's a pretty universal thing. If you want it badly, if you're working from desperation. Hello again, everybody. It seems that I got cut off. I hope the camera didn't pick up any of what I said when I realized it. Okay, where was I? Yes, you should never use magic for personal gain. And I'm trying to remember where I was. Oh, yeah, necessity and desire. And so it's if you're coming from desperation, it's pretty much universally acknowledged. Okay, Little White Hummingbird says, you are still here, just a hiccup of an interruption. Thank you so much for keeping track of that. It was kind of weird. I've never seen that happen before. I'm trying to backtrack my steps. I apologize to everybody for my mental slowness today. That was just quite the curveball. But it's universally acknowledged that if you're coming from desperation or a firm belief that I should not be doing this for this reason, either your results will not manifest at all, or they will go haywire, or you will not get what you're expecting. This is something I definitely want to address. I want to give it its entire video. I'm not sure when. I'm loosely following the path of the church calendar and the secular calendar. I'm loosely following both when I choose my subjects. So I'll figure out when to do that. Now, a very similar one is that magic is a vow of poverty. Again, absolutely false. Now, I've known many people who are magicians, and they're very good at what they do, but they do live below the poverty line. And this has to do with the fact that even though there are people who say you should do money magic every day, or you should do money magic on a big scale or something like that, even though money magic is pushed in some sections of the occult community, not everybody can do the same types of magic. In my case, for example, I'm extremely good at defense. I'm extremely good at protection. However, I am terrible when it comes to anything involving love. I mean, there was that one time where I was helping, my friend Rhiannon down in New Orleans. I was helping her find a partner for her friend. And that had some interesting off-the-wall side effects. I talked about this. It happened back in '99. But in general, I am terrible at it. I don't do very well with luck either, even though I can manifest things without a problem. I need a lawnmower, not a problem. I need a vehicle, not a problem. In fact, most recently, my van was having problems. It was kind of ironic. I just put brand new struts in it because one of the struts broke clear through. Put brand new struts in it. The next day, it's having problems. It will shut down. Like I'm driving down the road, it will shut down as though I'd pulled out the key. Well, long story short, it was beyond my ability to diagnose. We tried to reprogram the key and all that stuff. Beyond my ability to diagnose, I did not want to have to deal with a new ECM because the tool to program it would cost more than the part. I just didn't want to deal with that. Well, I ended up getting back my old Jeep. 3.5 years ago, you might remember, my Cavalier was having problems with suspension, and out of thin air, I manifested a Jeep for free. Well, long story short, my aunt got it. It went to her garage. She did some work on it, and I got the Jeep back like about a week and a half ago. So my point is, some people are better at certain things than others. Now, if you're adept, you'll never be needy. That does not strictly mean money. It means you'll never be needy at whatever it is that your area of expertise happens to be. If you're good at love magic, you'll never be alone. If you're good at health magic or healing magic, well, you may be sick because there are things that magic's just not going to do in the medical field. Like, for example, bring back somebody who was dead, or make you live until, say, the year 40,000. There are just some limitations, because physical plane limitations are a real thing. The magic's not necessarily limited. The physical plane circumstances may limit what you are able to do at that time and with those ingredients. A chef is only as good as their ingredients. And those circumstances are what you're putting into that soup. But so the idea that magic is about poverty is self-debunking, in my opinion. I do think that some people use it as copium to cover that they are not good at certain types of magic, even if they may be excellent at others. And the key here is to find a balance. is to find a balance to where you are bringing in what you are able to bring in. And if it's not money, then it's not money. But it can be other things. Like, what are the things that money can buy? What are the things that money would be used for? If you could pull in those things, it's still not about poverty. Okay, the next one is that you should never talk to evil spirits. Now, this is a tough one. I'm not trying to debunk it because it is mostly true. In Catholic theology, friendship with the demon is a thing that is to be shunned and avoided. That's very clear. However, there are times when you talk to the demon. If you are attempting to get rid of one, you are generally talking to it. I command thee, spirit so-and-so, whosoever thou art, and all thine associates to depart from this creature of God. Tell thy name, thy number, thine hour of departure, through the ascension, resurrection, death, passion, birth of Jesus Christ, and his coming again in judgment. That's from the rite of exorcism. Yes, apotropaic exorcism is talking to an evil spirit in order to get it the hell out of somebody or some place or something. So that one's actually partially true. But I'm going to move on to the last one I have in my notes. Magic will turn you into a sort of god. This is called apotheosis, where you become a god in an adversarial style or outside of theosis, outside of the economy of salvation. You become a god in your own right. This is just another thing I've seen on mostly LHP channels, on LHP writings, but I've seen it's seen a version of it inside the New Age movement too, where they talk about ascension, where you ascend into basically a form of godhood. Could be pure energy being or something like that. I've seen it written out different ways. But it's effectively the same thing. And this is exactly something that was talked about as far back as the 15th century. Alfonso Spina talks about this in his Fortalizione Fidei in the 10th category of demons. There are those versions of demons who deceive witches into believing that they have powers and they're like really powerful and stuff. I think that's self-explanatory. And that's how these spirits operate. These spirits operate by offering favors. And with each favor, they guide you a little bit away. It could be away from your core principles. It could be away from your family. It could alienate you from your family, from your friends. Very much like how an abusive spouse operates. Or like how a pimp operates. They lure you in. Hey, kid, want some candy? Just get in the van. But you don't have to get in the van yet. Here's a free sample. Oh, you want some more candy? Sooner or later, you're getting in that van. Or sooner or later, the honeymoon phase is over and you're getting beat every night. Or sooner or later, you better put yourself out there and do the work. Please don't make me have to spell that out in any more detail than I just did. The entities that will tell you that you can be a god in your own right. It's no different from Genesis chapter 3, the serpent of the Garden of Eden. If you eat of the fruit of the tree, you will be as gods. And what happened? They had the knowledge of good and evil. They lost their status in the garden. They were condemned to toil. They were condemned to the pain of childbearing. They were condemned to death and sickness, and so on and so on and so on. So the idea that with magic you can become a sort of god is an absolute falsehood. It's an absolute falsehood, and one that I would put no stock in. That's as far as my notes take. I'm trying to think, are there any others to go over? I'll probably write up about it in the description or in the comments or something like that. And if you think of any, please let me know. Because I mentioned this right now, the various things that can lead us astray from our path, and this stuff was acknowledged in older occult writings, even as recent as, say, the 1960s. It was acknowledged in older occult writings. It seems to have been the divorce between occultism and religion that took place. Actually, I'm not really sure. Was it, what was the 70s, the 90s maybe? I'm not really sure. Most of my learning came from older materials. It was from older materials, so I actually missed all this. But the divorce seems to have happened, and with that, that's when we had all the stuff of magic will make you into a god, apotheosis, or you have to be adversarial, and all of that stuff, with some people trying to hold on to a version of Christian piety with the idea that you should never do personal gain. It's weird, it's convoluted, it makes no sense to me. And so the course that we are going to walk throughout these videos this year is going to be as pure as I am able to make it. We're not going to be taking drugs. We're not going to be pleasuring ourselves over sigils. We're not going to be railing in impotent rage against God and nature and the entire natural order. What we're going to do is learn the natural order. We're going to work within the natural order. And we're going to be strengthened in our walk with God, with the saints, with the angels, and hopefully with our fellow man. That is the form of magic that I will be discussing in this series as we go forward. That is the form of magic. I don't expect you to do everything that I talk about or to put everything into your practice. Some of you may be much further advanced than what I'm talking, because I'm planning this around somebody who has no concept, no clue about magic or occultism, no experience, and I want to take them from the very bottom, the very ground floor, all the way up. That's what I'm looking to do here. Now, I will not be broadcasting on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Day. Sorry, my brain isn't braining very well. I will not be broadcasting on Christmas Day, which is next Sunday. For those of you watching 10 years from now, Christmas Day this year is on a Sunday. Because I have family, many of us have family or friends or loved ones or other things to do on that day. Those of you who go to church only on Christmas and Easter, well, that's your day. I'm not going to interrupt that. When we get back together on New Year's Day, which will also be a Sunday, I will start talking about microcosmic magic. I'm probably going to spend the next month or two talking about various aspects of microcosmic magic and things to do with that, and how to work that, how to develop in it, and how to train in it. The things that I say may not be the things that you do. That's fine. I am not seeking to put down anybody else's system. I may have harsh words for this or that, or basically aspects of this or that system. I may have harsh words, but those are simply my opinions. If the system emphasizes safety of the practitioner, if the system gets real-world results, I will not dispute it. If I see something in a system that is dangerous or may be misleading, I will call it out, but I am not condemning the people who work these systems. I will repeat this again on New Year's Day at the very beginning. I meant to say this at the beginning of this series. I will do that. I will begin with microcosmic magic. And on Christmas Eve, I may or may not broadcast something like maybe a brief sermon, maybe a brief talk about some ideas that are congenial to the overall arc of the season that have been brewing in my mind since the end of October. So we'll go with that too. In the meantime, I wish you all a Merry Christmas, since I won't be seeing you that day. I wish you a very early Happy New Year, and a holy rest of your Advent. And may the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.